Hello, UMass Boston, and welcome back to our series on parliamentary procedure. Today, we're going to talk about something really empowering to members, something that gives members a right to assert themselves in the face of leadership or other members to make sure that things are being done correctly. And there's a number of ways that we can do that by the rules of parliamentary procedure. But let's start with the most significant one, and that is to call a point of order. So why might you use what's called point of order? Well, you use it when any member feels that the rules aren't being followed and wishes to call attention to the breach and have it potentially acted upon, right? Now, here's what's cool about calling point of order. When you perceive something not right, you can interrupt the proceedings. You can say, point of order, and then you have to wait. And the chair will say to you, state your point of order. So you must be recognized by the chair to assert yourself in that way. So before we get into the specific situation, do you realize your power that you, as just a member or any member of the group, has the right to make sure that the leadership and others in the room are doing the right thing? And that's when you might choose to call a point of order. So let's get into a specific situation. We're at our meeting, and the president skips over number 3 on the agenda, which was entitled Program Problems. Now, you, as a member, really want to talk about the problems at last week's program, right? You feel like the members really didn't do what they were supposed to, and that largely the president is to blame. Now, you find it kind of odd that the president has decided to skip over number 3. You feel Xi is doing something wrong by that. And really, in your own thinking, you believe that Xi is skipping over number 3 because she doesn't want to stand the heat and take responsibility in front of everybody. Now, you're not sure, but you don't think that the president could just skip something on the agenda. So what can you do? What can you do? That's when you, little old you again, could call point of order. So how would you do it? You would simply say, point of order. The leader says, state your point of order. You say, you skipped number 3 on the agenda, and I'm not sure that you're allowed to do that, right? Now, the president will either act or not on that. So maybe the president will say, oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm sorry, you're right. I'll do it next. Or they'll say, oh, no, I'm not going to do number 3 today, right? And you may not like that still, right? You may say, no, I still think you're doing the wrong thing. How could you just skip over something that you don't feel like talking about, right? What you could do then is appeal that decision. Yeah, you would appeal to the meeting. So at the moment the president says, no, I've decided we're not going to do that today, you can just say to the whole meeting, you say to everyone in the room, shall the chair's decision be sustained? Now, at that moment, it's as if you put a motion on the floor. It's debatable. People can talk about whether or not it's right to skip number 3. People can give their feelings about it. The chair in this case, the president that we're talking about, she can participate because they need to kind of back up why they're doing what they're doing. When all of this discussion happens to your question about can the chair, decision be sustained, it will go to a vote. For the chair's decision to be reversed, it will require a majority of no votes, like no, the chair's decision shall not be sustained, and then we get to discuss number 3 at the meeting, right? So that's pretty cool and pretty powerful. I want you to think about that. Now, in the example we're using, keep in mind, the president didn't say at the opening of the meeting, oh, if it's all right with everybody, we're going to move number 3 on the agenda to next week's meeting, right? Now, people then would have a full debate about that. They just didn't say anything and look to skip over it and not discuss it. You can make sure that even things the leadership doesn't want to talk about get talked about at the meeting. And I love the power of each of you in that. Now, there are 3 kind of points and questions that you can also employ to make sure your leadership and the members are treated fairly and effectively at the meeting. And you can assert them in this way. So let's do these really quickly. The first of this is calling, a point of parliamentary inquiry. That's advice can be asked about the correct procedures as necessary. So you're like, let's say, for example, the president of the organization refuses to allow a motion from the floor. A member says, I move that we allocate $50 to the Biology Honor Society. And the president says, no, I don't like that motion. I'm not going to hear that. You could call point of parliamentary inquiry. Can the president just refuse to allow a member to make a motion, right? Now, what would happen is that would then force that question to be answered. Now, if you have a parliamentarian, someone at the meeting who's responsible for this, they would be the one who would rule on that. If you don't, someone goes to their computer and checks out the rules and says, you can't do that. And by the way, just for the good of the order, the president cannot refuse a motion from the floor. This example is a real one I've seen that we corrected during the meeting, thanks to point of parliamentary inquiry. The next one that we want to talk about is what we call point of information. Point of information can be used at any time when you either need facts or you want to point out a fact that's being talked about in an error as necessary. So let's say we're in a meeting and we're talking about like the library hours, and someone says, and you know, the library closed early because they're supposed to close at 2 a.m. And you're like, no, I know the library hours. The library closes at 11 o'clock. You could interrupt and say, point of information, the library doesn't close at 2 a.m. The library's hours are until 11 p.m., right? And that's to make sure that the whole assembly is always talking about information that is correct, that we always have facts. That gives the members power to assert themselves, to make sure that we're always talking about the correct things, especially if the members know that, right? And the last of the questions and inquiries is called question of privilege, right? And that's when you need a change in the physical space or in the meeting for comfort or convenience. So let's say you're in a meeting and there's a lot of noise out in the hallway and you're in the back of the room, but you can't get to the door yourself to close it. But the noise is distracting you. You can't hear all the discussion at the meeting. You can say question of privilege, right? And the chair then will recognize you. You could say, could you please close the door? I can't hear what's going on in the meeting. It's too noisy out there. And then someone will go and close it. What that does, it stops you having to crawl over everybody or walk across the front of the meeting room to close the door. You're allowed to get that privilege, to exercise that privilege, to get your need taken care of so you can do what? You can fully participate in the meeting. So that's question of privilege. You know, if you were freezing, right, but you would have to walk all the way across the room to close the window, you could use that. And question of privilege, would you shut the window? It's freezing back here. And they can close the window of the room. Like, so anything that goes to comfort, convenience, so that you can fully participate in the meeting is when you use question of privilege. I hope this is illustrating again how each and every member through parliamentary procedure has rights. And when you understand them and know how to use them, you can make sure that every single person is treated equitably and respectfully when using this. So if you have questions about point of order or any question or inquiry, it is my great hope that you'll feel free to contact me at the email on your screen that you see, msmtrainsyou@mac.com, or in any of the ways you see, in order to get questions about these or anything else related to parliamentary procedure answered. I look forward to seeing you on our next installment. Thank you so much.